Alright, in this video I'm going to talk a lot about dry ice and using it at Halloween time. Now, dry ice, when you get it at the store, I oftentimes get it either Baskin Robbins, or you can get it at your local grocery store, and they sell dry ice. Dry ice should never be touched with your hands because it will burn you. It's really cold. And what that sound is making is, as the dry ice is basically the gas is coming off the dry ice, this is carbon dioxide. What you're looking at is not water. It's not really, well, it's very cold, so it's kind of an ice, but it's compressed gas. So it's normally what you floating around the air, it's what you breathe out when you breathe out, and it is compressed to the point that it becomes a solid. Now I'm going to take a couple of chunks of that, put it in the bag, and I'm going to give you a demonstration of what happens when you use either hot and cold water and then what to do. Now, we're going to take this and we're going to put cold water. Now with cold water, we get a good Halloween effect. But what you're going to see is how quickly this effect stops. What is happening is that dry ice, which is so cold, is making that water very, very cold. Once that water gets cold, it's going to start to freeze. So it's freezing the water, and the water will freeze around the chunk of dry ice. And once it has done that, the effect will stop because the water is trapped, the dry ice, inside a frozen shell of ice. And that kind of protects the dry ice from giving off any more of its smoke. Now, if you're putting this on a table, you want a long effect of a little bit of smoke, but you really don't care about much smoke, then that's okay, but you're going to slowly, constantly have to feed it. If you leave your bag out on the counter of dry ice like this, the dry ice will dissipate, and you'll find that your dry ice won't have very much come the end of the evening because it'll just slowly give off its gas. Normally we keep this in the freezer, and if you kept it wrapped tightly in a towel, it'll also help to keep the dry ice for a longer period of time. So as you can see, I don't have a lot of overflow in the bowl, and though it still bubbles quite a lot, it's not nearly the effect. Now I'm going to go ahead and dump this off a little early. And what we have is just the dry ice actually covered in frozen water. This time we're going to add the hottest water we can get. And you're going to see a big difference. Oops. No wonder, I was wondering why that was going bad. That wasn't very hot water. But I actually do have a lot more of effect than the last time. So we're going to go ahead and dump this off. And instead of cold water, though we don't have very much left, I'll show you still with very little amounts what we can do. Hot, okay, yes, that's hot water now. So here we go. This is about as hot a water as you're going to get out of your tap. Now there's not very big chunks, so I'm going to have to add some more in. That is already hot water. Here we go. There is the best Halloween effect. Hot water will do the trick. Now cold water will do pretty good, but not for very long. Take a look at how much coverage there is. It's going all the way to the junk on the counter, covering over into the fruit. That's a serious flow of dry ice. I'm going to zoom in and show you what's happening at the counter. So this is covering a very, very large amount of surface. The sink is completely covered. And the effect will go for quite a long time. This will go until that water has gotten cold. Now, already, I'm starting to lose the back effect. I went into the window, there's no longer any smoke there. Still over by the fruit bowl, still a very nice curtain effect coming over the counter, but I have lost a lot of the effect. So this is back about where I was with the cold water. Didn't really last a lot longer, but I did get more effect out of it. Same rule would apply, though, that when I take and pour off that water, this was the end of my bag. I had bigger chunks earlier. I don't want to pour off all these little chunks into the sink, so I'm going to try to be a little careful. So I find bigger chunks works the best, but I'm going to take and I'm going to replenish the water, and this is how you're going to keep the effect going. If you wanted a large effect on the outside, putting this in maybe a fondue pot with a flame underneath so that it would be reheating would be a great way to keep the effect going. That way you could use the same water, not have to drain it off, plop in a chunk of dry ice every few minutes or whenever you want another effect at your party, and it would get a great bubbling effect. We use the same dry ice, and instead of using water, we'll put it in sugar water with root beer flavoring, and we'll make our own root beer. The effect of the bubbling dry ice will carbonate the liquid that it's in. We've carbonated grape juice, fruit juice, sugar water, lots of things. The biggest problem that you're going to have is that at the very bottom of your fruit juice, you will have lumps of frozen fruit juice covering and stopping the reaction. So if you start with something that's actually warm rather than room temperature, you'll get more of a bubbling effect before it stops, and the more bubbling you can get to go through your liquid, the more carbonated of a flavor you're going to get. Personally, 100% pure Welch's grape juice with a big block of dry ice chunked in the bottom of a very large pitcher, because it will actually foam like crazy and make a mess if it gets to the top and goes over the pitcher. But it makes a excellent, excellent dessert to have real carbonated grape juice if you're going for the non-alcoholic party. Now, you don't ever want to put this in your drink. You got to be very careful not to ingest a piece of dry ice. It can cause us a lot of damage if it gets inside your body. It is very, very cold and will actually have a burning effect. And also, if you breathe a large amount of the smoke that you see coming off this, it can make it a little hard to breathe. Earlier this evening, I was laying in a coffin. We loaded a whole bowl full of dry ice, filled it full of hot water, stuck it in the coffin with myself, and took some great pictures, but only within a few minutes, I was having a very hard time to breathe. The coffin was wide open. I could breathe, but the gas around me was so full of carbon dioxide rather than oxygen, I could really be difficult. So you wouldn't want to put anybody in a place that was confined without enough free-breathing air, because this is a large amount of non-breathable gas coming off of this. So an open room with plenty of ventilation is required. So there's a basic tutorial of dry ice, what it does. Now, what you've seen here is each chunk that I have thrown in there is about 1 pound. A pound costs about $1 at the local store. You can get it at Baskin-Robbins ice cream stores. I'm not sure what their rates are. It might be a little more. But 1 pound does about the effect that you're seeing here. So if you have a Halloween party, it's going to go long. You want to do this effect a number of times. Just remember what you saw was about 1 pound. So you get about 10 effects out of this. You could do it as smaller chunks as well. But that's what about 1 pound will do. And as we sit here, you'll notice the effect will actually go for about 15-20 minutes. It just gets less and less and less. Now what will happen is if you let this sit in the room, as I said earlier, as the water warms up, the ice around the dry ice will melt. So if you put this in a fondue pot, you can get a nice long, eerie effect. But it will get less and less And within about a couple more minutes, if I kept foaming, you'd notice that the smoke no longer can actually make it over the edge, and it will just kind of go right down to itself as it dissipates. If I then have super cooled, very cold water in the bowl, I add a new chunk of dry ice. That dry ice will freeze up faster. So it's always best to have some way of either reheating or replenishing the warm water to have a really good effect. Happy Halloween, and have fun with your dry ice.